In this video, we're going to look at a basic link in Ruby on Rails and how it's created, and we're actually going to take a look at the scaffold that we generated in a prior video to get an idea of how links actually work. I'm going to start my text editor here and go and take a look at. Now, we had views generated earlier by the scaffold command that we issued. It was in an earlier video. And several of the files that were generated were these view files, the RHTML files. And Ruby on Rails created these for us via that generation script. And each of them have some links in them that were created in there specifically. And this is what I'm talking about right here, this line in particular. And the construction is very specific to Ruby on Rails, and what this is actually called is embedded Ruby, or ERB you might see it called. And there's two forms of it. And how the first form works is that we have a less than sign, a percentage sign, and then we have some Ruby code, and then we close that out with a percentage sign and a greater than sign. We're encapsulating this Ruby code in between this less than percent sign and percent sign greater than. The difference between this form and this form is this equal sign right here after the percent sign, right here in this case. And this distinguishes this one from this one in that this actually creates output to the screen. This does not create any output, this particular line. And you notice that down here there's some embedded script inside of here that does create output, but this one does not. The other thing that you'll notice that there's a for loop here that encapsulates all of this. And in later videos we'll talk about how these for loops actually work when we get into more advanced views types things. The primary thing I wanted to point out here is how we actually link around in Ruby on Rails via the views. And it's a very simple command. It's link_to, and then we give it a name, and this is what shows up on the screen. And then we give it an action. This action corresponds to a method in our controller. So if we go look in our movie controller, we're going to find a edit action in here. So the action corresponds to that particular method. And then finally, some information that gets sent back is our ID gets set to this symbol. ID gets set to whatever the current movie is that we're clicking on. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Actually, I got to start the application. Switch over to my browser and go into show. Now this is the screen that we're looking at. So if we go ahead and look at the source code of this, you'll see here's the two links that were generated. Ahref movies. This is the actual URL that we're going to connect back to. And here's that name, edit. And if we switch over to our editor, we can see how this was created.